Special thank you to our sponsor, iGenX. iGenX isn't just a small business. It's a powerhouse ally ready to tackle your agency's toughest tech challenges head-on. Specializing in low-code, no-code solutions, advanced analytics, and project management, iGenX is your go-to partner for both federal and commercial projects. But what sets iGenX apart? As a Salesforce Summit-level partner, the company brings unparalleled expertise across the entire Salesforce ecosystem. From MuleSoft and Einstein and Tableau, the expert teams at iGenX don't just build solutions, they engineer them, crafting robust data pipelines and creating stunning visualizations that drive real results. At iGenX, success isn't just a goal, it's a promise. The team is dedicated to delivering measurable benefits that transform your operations. Ready to partner with iGenX? Contact the team at info@igenx.com, spelled info@eigenx.com. Deal, but sometimes one could argue that the smaller deals take just as much time, if not more, than the large deals. I don't know how true that is ultimately, but I think that in my experience, if you're a capture manager and you have to be responsible for shepherding the deal all the way through, I would say probably no more than 5 at the very most, to be doing a good job running the blue teams, running this, running that. Can you imagine running all of those things for more than 5 deals? Like, your brain would explode.
Welcome to GovCom Unfiltered, where your journey through the labyrinth of federal contracting begins. I'm Alexa Tsui, your guide and host on this epic adventure. Here, we dive deep into the heart of government contracting, shedding light on the heroic tales of those who navigate its complex terrain. Our mission? To bring you closer to the action, revealing the critical steps, triumphant victories, and occasional pitfalls that our intrepid adventurers face. Your journey into the world of government contracting starts now, and we could not be happier to have you with us. Let's embark on this adventure together.
All right. Welcome to GovCom Unfiltered. In today's episode, we are going to live record a discussion with me, your host, Alexa Tsui, Chief Operating Officer of G2X. We're going to live record BD and Capture Unleashed Part 1. And I said it was Part 1 because I know that there's going to be a lot of questions. There's going to be a lot of interest in perhaps a Part 2, maybe even a Part 3. So I wanted to get this out there and invite everybody live so we could have some good discussion about this. Some of this today is going to be a hot take, which means it might be different than your experience, than your opinions, but I'm hoping to drive some really good engagement and conversation today. So 2 things. If you have any technical difficulties, drop them into the chat. And if you have any questions that you would like to get answered, drop them into the Q&A. And I'll have the Q&A running and I'll try to answer them live as you ask them and tie them into the slides as we kind of go through the slides. And also wanted to say that please introduce yourself, drop your LinkedIn link in the chat for the webinar. And I think that way we can kind of know who's all here. I actually did a perusal of the attendee list right before I hopped on, and I was super grateful for all the leaders that actually signed up to listen in today. And I was actually glad because, like I said, this is a little bit of a hot take on some things. And I think that it'll be good to stir the pot like we like to do on a Friday afternoon. Good times. So with that being said, I will go ahead and get started. All right, maybe if I can advance my slides. Okay, so for the agenda today, I think I also published it on LinkedIn. We are going to talk about business development. What does it mean exactly, and how do I do this? Capture, what does it mean exactly, and how do I do this? PWin, what does it mean? How do I do this? Step and gate reviews. What is the strategy here? Why do this? And how can I do this? And then slide 5 is something I've never seen anybody else talk about. And that's really what questions to ask when you're interviewing for a BD capture role. Because I've interviewed for a few of them. I know that almost everybody in the industry has interviewed for them. And sometimes you don't know like the gotcha questions that you should ask. And you could probably save yourself a lot of headaches if you knew like where those landmines were that you could ask beforehand. So that's going to be the chat today. And one thing before we jump in, I just wanted to say a couple of things. First of all, if you are a VAR, a value-added reseller, then some of this might not be the same way that you would do things. So I'm talking about IT services, and I'm also talking about mostly small, medium-sized business development and capture. So if you work for a large business, like let's just say SAIC or something, your strategy might be slightly different because you will have more resources around you at each one of these roles. And also there'll probably be a little bit more of a process driven around the entire thing. So I just wanted to kick it off by saying that, and also say that the reason why this is such an exciting field is that there's not like a manual published. There's no PMP for BD and capture. There's none of that. It's literally the art and the science and the Venn diagram between there about what works and what doesn't work. So it's a little bit of my opinions and what I've seen work. And hopefully everybody thinks that it's worth listening to today. All right, we've got a lot of different chats going on. Let's see. Perfect. Wow, I love this. Everybody's introducing themselves. Keith Kawasaki, Civic Actions, yay, Lori Dabowski. Also have to say that there's a few BD Capture people that are attending today that I also look up to. So if you want to jump in and add to something that I say, feel free to do that. +1, on Reddit, they do a +1. You can do that as well. So it's great to see everybody. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and move on to the next slide and really get started here. All right. So before I jump into BD and capture, I wanted to go over the government procurement timeline. And I also have never seen anybody else break it down like this. So I think it's helpful to set the stage for our discussion today. So the government timeline at the top and the industry timeline at the bottom, you will notice it absolutely aligns. So the government will start out with their acquisition planning that will roll into the RFI sources sought, that will roll into a draft RFP, RFQ, a final RFP, RFQ. And if you're really lucky, you'll get a nice Q&A session, you'll get an industry day. And then of course, your RFQs will have to go into a submitted status, which we call that source selection. And then it'll be awarded, and then it will be protested probably, right? I've noticed a lot of 1102s, our contracting officer friends, building in protest period timelines, which is really smart. On the industry side, during the government's acquisition planning, and even maybe before this, like over here, when it's still living in the program office, it is great to actually be in front of it way early. So for example, you're going to do a meet and greet, and maybe you even have a relationship with the program office. Maybe you're delivering in that program office. Maybe you are driving growth through delivery, and that is a different thing. A doer seller model is different than an outside growth team. And that is a hill I will die on. So we'll talk more about that later. But if you are doing delivery in that office and you know the program well, then you can get in there and have those discussions very early. So when it hits the contracting office, which is this kind of like right here, when there's a lot of planning going on between the program and the contracting office, then of course, you're going to respond to the RFI and the sources sought. Hi, Julie. Say hi to your pupper for me. If there's been some discussion recently that I've heard around RFIs and RFPs, mostly around the RFI thing of like, I'm a small business, should we respond? Is the government going to steal my ideas? Is it worth it? Does it go into a black hole? I'm going to say there's really not a discussion to be had here. If you want to be a government contractor in the IT services realm and you want to be relevant and you want to be successful, you don't have a choice. You have to respond to RFIs. You have to respond to sources sought. You have to get out there and make yourself known, make your company known, all of those things. We're going to get into that in the next slide. Okay, step 1 and blue team. So after the RFI sources sought, it is your job as a BD professional, and notice my language, we're talking BD here, right? To conduct the step 1, get the executives in the room, pitch the company on the opportunity, And then from there, if it is accepted by the company, you want to roll into a blue team. You want to have a solutions architect. You want to have your capture managers picked out. You want to have your pricing people involved. You want to have your recruiters involved at that point in time, because you want to start that whole process very, very early. So right here, right? Okay, final RFQ, RFP, you want to do a step 2 review, because a lot of times between the draft and the final, things might have changed, right? And part of your step 1 should also include your plan B and maybe even a plan C. How many times have you been like, yeah, we're going to prime this. It's going to be awesome. We're going to have our teammates lined up over here. And then it comes out and, service disabled veteran owned. I mean, I use that example. It definitely happened to me. So you want to have your plan Bs lined up, and make sure you're good to go there. So step 3 is going to be around your Q&A and your industry day. A lot of times new information comes out, especially in Q&A. And the reason why you have these steps is the case that you need to change something drastic. You want to keep your executives in the loop. They probably have other things to do than to stay on top of every single procurement. So that's why you have these very tailored step reviews or gate reviews to keep your executives in the loop. If something happens that puts the company at risk, or that changes the whole entire dynamic, maybe the entire thing goes LPTA last minute, or it goes from firm fixed price to cost plus. That is a risk decision that is probably going to be more than, just the capture person and their brain and, working with the proposal ops team and the BD team. That is something that you need to make sure the executive team is on board with, those kind of changes. So then it goes from red team to gold to white. And then during source selection, everybody panics. Just kidding, that was kind of a joke. But you kind of wait for down select and orals. These days, the government has been doing a lot more down select kind of proposals. Well, they'll say phase 1, phase 2, and then you can decide, if you don't make phase 1, if you're going to put in the time and effort to go into phase 2. And then BAFO, which stands for best and final offer. That's really the government's way of saying, like, yeah, thank you for your pricing, but I think you can do better. And some of your friends in the industry gave us a proposal that was slightly cheaper. So that's really them trying to get the best cost for that particular opportunity. And then, of course, you have the protest period in there. So from start to finish, the entire process is between 12 to 18 months. And that's actually kind of, anybody in here is probably like, that timeline sounds about right, but it could be longer. It absolutely can be. So when you're forecasting, when you're having the pipeline reviews with your teams, make sure that you have a buffer built in for anything to push to the right about 6 months. Because, based on the budgets, based on the election years, based on a whole bunch of things that are outside of our control, that timeline could be shorter or it could be longer. So I'm just going to check to see if there are any questions before I move on. Sorry, I'm going to stop sharing just for 1 second. It's going to get everything back on one page here for me. Okay, I don't see any questions, so I'm going to start sharing, and I'm going to, nope, there's no open questions. Okay, I'm going to start sharing again and continue. So, all right, okay, and we're back on track. Oops, oh, we're going this way. All right, Canva. All right, so it is my opinion, Alexa's opinion, right, that business development and capture are 2 different functions, and that the person that is very good at business development is not going to be super good at capture, and vice versa. I mean, could both of these split personalities live in the same person? Hypothetically. But would you even want it to be, is the question, because what you're trying to do is 2 different things. So let me explain. Business development is the front part of the government procurement lifecycle. And when you're doing this job, it is the following. It is the cross between marketing and sales, and being a detective and being an influencer and being out there in industry. It is getting customer intimacy, industry intimacy, building trust through repeated actions of excellence. And I wrote in here, this was kind of a joke also, being popular in both the government and the industry. It's more about really building trust, right? People buy things from people that they trust, that they know they could pick up the phone and text you or call you and you're going to be responsive. Um, and then I put a quote in here that some people I heard before, actually. I overheard in a meeting one time. Yeah, but you can't get paid to be popular and make friends and influence things, right? Okay, well, yeah, you can. And actually, it's kind of your entire job as a business developer, to be honest, to really understand the missions, understand the agencies, understand the solutions, and understand if your company makes the right choice for that particular opportunity. Your deliverables as a BD person should be the pipeline. It should be responding to RFIs, sources, thoughts, and also to do the gate one reviews. Um, so, and I do have a few final thoughts on reputation and personal branding. This industry is really small. Everybody knows that. You can't really burn a bridge. And you know, the personal branding piece comes in really handy when a plan B or a plan C, if you need to pick up the phone and be like, okay, I need a hub zone that's 8A that has a CMMI level 3. And if you have a big network, you can pick up the phone and call your buddy who works at CWS, hey Jonah, and be like, hey, I know you're hub zone, I know you have CMMI, I know you're an IT company, could you help? And, you know, could you be my plan B on this, right? And the tighter you are with your network, the easier that will be for you to do that kind of thing. And then, of course, there are a lot of tools out there, and the screenshots that you see up here are all from G2X, because, you know, I work there. And so one of the things, and this is why this screenshot is living right here, is it's really G2X has the most robust events database in the entire industry. So understanding which events are where, which ones you need to attend, both on the government side and on the industry side, is critical to being a good BD person, because you need to be in front of your government friends. You need to understand the missions from their point of view, which means attending the events where they're speaking, following up with them after, understanding what was behind the presentation, not just the presentation itself, and taking that as like your win theme notes, right? I think we've all done that before. You want to make sure that you have the, you know, where you need to be and when you need to be there kind of thing. So, all right, let's keep it moving. Let's talk about capture. So I think about capture is really somebody who's very strategic, somebody who has that on a disc profile. They have the S and they have the C. They know they're very analytical, and they look at the deal from, can we win? What's the path? Should we even do this? Can we deliver? What are the win themes? And this person also is responsible for taking the blue team and moving it forward into the other color reviews. So should we team? What's the teaming strategy? What's the partnering? What's the pricing? Price to win, price to play, the independent government estimate. All of these things are really very tactical, very strategic things. So in my experience, as I had mentioned, the social butterfly of the BD person and the super strategic thinker strategy person should be two different people. Now, if you work for a really small company where, let's just say, there's 5 people in the whole headquarters, been there, done that, this might also be your job. And at that point, it's important to know, when does one job end and the next one start? Because these are very different functions, in my opinion. Hot take. Okay, I want to keep it moving, so I will move on to the next slide. All right, we're gonna talk PWIN. So PWIN is really the industry's fancy way of saying step reviews. Sorry, not step reviews. Sorry, forecast. What is your what number? Like 1 out of 100. What is your forecast for, like, what is your percentage of how much do you think you're gonna win? Percentage of win. Like, that's pretty much what it stands for. So, for example, I have a deal. I found it on sam.gov. It was the first time I saw it. And it's definitely like bullseye, something I could win, something we've done before. The customer knows that we exist, but I haven't been in there shaping it. So And we also don't really know what the final acquisition strategy looks like. So my P-win, if I was being honest with myself on that deal, would be pretty low. Because if we don't know what the acquisition strategy is going to be, and I wasn't in there talking to the program office to really understand the pain points and understand the mission and understand all those things to make sure we can show up as a good government contractor, then I would say we would be throwing spaghetti at the wall. It's a little bit more of a bluebirdy type of thing. Then I would say, if my boss asked me, well, what's your P1 on that one, Alexa? I would say probably closer to maybe 5%. So the percent that we would win is pretty low. So I do have to say at this point that this is an industry where you can do everything right and still lose. You can do everything wrong and accidentally win. It happens, right? And the no strategy is a strategy. I actually have friends in the industry that are like, gate reviews, step reviews, we don't do any of that. We just find things on sam.gov, eBuy, and we bid on them. And they actually win stuff. So it's fascinating, right? So the no strategy is a strategy, but I don't think it's the best strategy. I have another friend in the industry who owns one of those consulting businesses for proposals. She's really well known, and she shared with me some statistics that companies that actually have gate reviews have a 34% higher win rate or something like that, which is a lot. It was a lot. It was a staggering number. I was shocked. So the next slide, we're going to go into the actual math and the mechanics behind a P-win, like what exactly you should be measuring and how you get to the final numbers. But right now, I just wanted to talk about bluebirds. If the kind of bluebirds that you should run from are the ones that are very common in our industry. When somebody calls you up and says, oh my gosh, Alexa, I have this deal. We wrote the whole entire proposal last time. We came in second. You know, the only thing we lost on was price, but this time around, we know how to price it. And I know you don't know this customer, but we do. So I think you should be our prime. We'll be your sub. And I want you to give us the key personnel and we'll give you the proposal and we're going to win. This will be great. That kind of a thing, I would always say no to. So just make sure that, you know, when it comes to bluebirds, the kind of bluebirds that you'd say yes to, you know, you want to say yes to the things that also make sense. I'm a fan of a Hail Mary, man. I really am. But I've had to field a lot of those kind of calls, and you just have to get to the mechanics behind what exactly happened last time, because a lot of people think they lost on price when they might have lost on something else. That's a whole other presentation, right? But that happens a lot. So, all right, we're gonna keep moving on to the next slide. But these are the questions you should continually be asking yourself. Can we do this? More importantly, should we do this? How does winning look like? Or what does it take to get to the win? And then also, what else do I not know, right? If, you know, a lot of times what I hear is like, oh, well, the incumbent can no longer bid because they're not an 8A. Yeah, but the incumbent probably has 1, 2, or 3 JVs that you do know or you might not know about. So what else do you not know? And one of my friends in the industry, everybody knows how much I love Brian Lindholm. He's a black hat capture strategist. And I think the black hat reviews really have gone by the wayside because they're really time consuming and they're a little bit hard to do. But really it's about understanding what your competition is going to do and doing something different. So, all right, next slide. Step reviews or gate reviews, people call them both of those things. So I kind of just put both those terms in here. So this is a hot take. I'm going to tell everybody, I'm going to say it louder for the people in the back. If you do not have a relationship with the customer, not the contracting officer, I got plenty of contracting officer friends who I love them all dearly. If you do not have a relationship with the customer, or you do not have a personal history with this program and an understanding of the mission, this deal is not for you. Walk away. And remember, for everything that you know bid, you're saying yes to another deal. There are deals out there that will come your way that make more sense to the company. So this is how I broke it down. And every time I do one of these presentations, it looks a little bit different. So don't hold me to a previous presentation you might have seen me do. But it probably looks something like this, right? So for me, in my opinion, capability is going to be 30%. It is very high up here because if you don't have the ability to deliver on this, then what's the point of even bidding it, right? However, that being said, a lot of times there might be reasons to subcontract, especially as a small and medium-sized business. Having a subcontract strategy, I think, is key to success. And I think if I was going to start a government contracting company, I would have that strategy built in from day one, right? I would be reaching out to my systems integrator friends, and rather than doing the whole capability of the entire thing, I might sub and take on pieces and parts of it to grow and build out the company as the company grows. And then on the other side of it is the win strategy, right? If you don't have a win strategy, price to win, how are you going to price it? What do the win themes look like? What do the gotchas look like? You know, are there technologies in there that you don't have past performance with? All of those parts and pieces are part of your win strategy. And I feel like that is the 60% between those two, right? And that right there can help you determine your P-win. The contract itself, do you have the vehicle? And if you don't have the vehicle, do you have a partner that has a vehicle? I will say only one thing about mentor proteges. I know it's a very popular thing to do right now, but if you think about, you know, priming and subbing is like being in a serious relationship, mentor protege is like being married. And if anybody on this call is married, you have your good days, usually towards the beginning of it. And then you have a lot of days where you're gonna struggle. I remember I was in a mentor protege relationship with a large business. And we were aligned on everything. But the one thing we were not super aligned on was pricing. You know, and so it's good to know those things and to have those conversations way up front rather than finding out about them down the road, right? In the middle of a bid, or, you know, in a debrief from the government when they tell you that you are $70 million over their estimate. I mean, not like that's a personal story. All right, moving on. Competition. Also, if you don't know who else is bidding on this, then you're probably not going to be in the top 3, right? So let me talk a little bit about protests. Just the one thing I want to say is I think a lot of people don't realize, if you are not number 2 in a protest, you will get kicked out, not kicked out, but they'll throw your protest out as saying you're not an interested party. Like, even if your protest was right, and even if this, all these other things considered, if you are not number 2, they don't care. So when I try to build out, you know, a gate review or a step review and a P-win, I try to think about, can my company be 1 or 2? And if not, the deal is not for you. So, all right. So as a BD person, you are accountable and responsible for bringing consistent, accurate, and forecastable gate 1 reviews. That is my hot take. So, all right, if there are no questions, I will move on to the next slide.
Federal proposals, your voice, less time, exceptional results. Voltron gives you the power of custom language models to reduce proposal development costs by 54% and start to finish submission time by 63%. Voltron is the only AI platform that synthesizes the valuable business development and capture information you obtain to write high-quality compliant proposal content specific to your company in each solicitation. Stop throwing it over the fence. Schedule a demo today at vultron.ai.
All right. So what does your gate review look like? It's funny. This presentation looks very girly, lots of hearts, and it's because I was in yet another meeting last week where I was the only gal with 8 guys. So I was like, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna put together a BD capture presentation that looks very girly. So really, when you go into your step 1 gate 1s, you want it to look like this. You want to have a slide for the contracts. You want to have, whether it's firm fixed price, cost plus, you want to have where it's coming out of, you want to have, you know, all of the contract details, when it starts, when it ends, when the incumbent contract started and ended, you know, all of the things you can possibly think about. So have one whole slide on the contract itself. And then you're going to have one slide on the capability. What are they asking for? And how does it align to what you do today? Because that right there will help you start taking out some win themes, right? And then you're going to want to have one slide on win strategy. What is the riddle? I noticed I left my P in there. Whoops. What is the riddle? So the riddle is, you know, if you read sections L and M, a lot of times the government buries the riddle somewhere in there. And that is how they are going to evaluate you, right? Is it past performance first? Is it, mission suitability over past performance? Is it pricing over past performance? They'll always tell you which one they're going to look at first and how they're going to weight things. The big chunks of your proposal, they're going to tell you how they're going to weight them. So, make sure you pay attention to that and try to understand how are you going to respond, right? That should drive your response 100%. So, for example, if past performance is pass fail, don't spend days and days and days and days on it, right? It's pass fail. Get it in there, get it compliant, move on, right? Spend more time on pricing because usually that means that it's going to be a price sensitive bid. All right, moving on. Competition. Incumbents, key personnel, sneaky JVs, black hat intel gathering. Some of my most successful captures I've ever done in my career have been boots on the ground incumbent capture. And that means hitting up the people that are on the ground and meeting with them. And it's a lot harder post-COVID, I'll tell you that. And also people have a lot of strong ethics and morals, which is awesome. I mean, I do too. And they'll say, I don't feel comfortable meeting with you because, this contract's going to come up for recompete and, I'm really loyal to my company, and that kind of thing is okay, right? And you kind of develop these relationships, but you make it clear to them that you're not trying to poach them. You're not trying to do any of that. You just want to make an introduction and get to know them, right? Key personnel, I've been seeing a lot of protests around key personnel and folks, adding up years of experience, or, some of my favorite ones where the government's getting hip to our shenanigans, and they're saying like, okay, all right, industry, your key personnel has to be an actual employee. And then finding out after the fact that the company that won did not actually use an employee and they got protested and they lost. So that happens. The key personnel requirements are critical, which is why I feel like in a services industry, this is another hot take, recruiters are gold. They are your most important resource. Why? Because you are selling imaginary people to the US federal government. And the way that you're going to make those imaginary people real is through your recruiters. If you don't have good recruiters, or if you don't have good methods of capturing key personnel, holding on to them, being able to explain why they're so great, you're not going to be as successful as other companies that are really good at that. There are companies that their entire play is good recruiters. All right, shout out to my recruiting friends. All right, so before I jump into that, I'm gonna stop and ask if anybody has any questions, because we're moving into the part of the presentation where I talk about, as a BD capture professional, what questions you should be asking. So last time I checked, I didn't see any questions. I don't see any questions now. Alrighty, but maybe it wasn't as much of a hot take as I thought it was. All right, okay. So since I looked at the attendee list, and there's a lot of leaders on the call, I'm gonna flip around some of these questions into things you should be asking yourself, because hopefully some folks on this call will be asking you these questions in upcoming interviews. And if you're not thinking about it from this perspective, then you probably need to rethink your approach. So, expectations, questions to ask in a BD capture interview to ensure you have the right company. You really want that to be a good fit. I mean, everybody does. Everybody wants to come to work fired up and excited about what they've got going on. So the first one that I would say is, what is the timeline that you expect to see results? If you are in a BD or an interview for a capture role and somebody says, we really want you to put numbers on the board fast, within 6 months. Okay. That means they want you to come in the door with a pipeline that's 3/4 of the way complete. So that kind of indicates to me that it's not super, number one, realistic. Number two, it's not something that is feasible. And number three, it's also, it kind of speaks to like not having a lot of ethics, because they're kind of asking you to go and bring deals from a previous company over to this company. And, it's just not something that I would do. So this is a question I would ask. Anything over 18 months is perfectly acceptable. If they give you a year, I would say, hopefully they have some hot tech that you can sell. But if it's 18 months, be like, okay, cool, we're on the same page, we're good. Talk to me about bonuses. How are they tied to results? This is a big question. If you are going into a BD or capture role and you are not tied to a profit sharing model, don't take that job, because there are plenty of them out there where they are offering profit sharing. And what profit sharing means is, let's just say you were running capture on a deal that was 40 million and the company wins. Your bonus should be tied to a piece of that deal. And I'm not talking about like yearly bonuses on company performance. That's a whole other thing. And yeah, you should definitely get that too. But I'm explaining like your win bonus should be tied to the number of every proposal that you bid. So it gets a little bit more confusing when you deal with big BPAs and GWACs and IDIQs like Polaris and Alliant and all that. Hypothetically, I would say that the win bonus on that should be higher. But one of the other things I would always ask is, what about the proposal ops team? How are they bonused? How are the BD people and the capture people bonused separately? What about the recruiters? How are they bonused, right? So the most successful companies I've ever seen have the whole team get bonused, actually. Not just the BD person, not just the capture person, but your proposal ops team and your recruiters, right? Remember how I said your recruiters are the engine of a services company? This is facts. Okay, moving on. Is there a typical percent of the revenue that BD people earn in the industry? Brandy, it's a really good question. And I get asked this a lot because I do a lot of mentoring through like salary negotiation kind of stuff. I don't think there's a hard and fast rule. And that's why this is such an important question, because companies straight shenanigans, especially if you're a junior person or a mid and you haven't had to have this direct conversation and you don't know how much to ask for. I would push that number back to the BD capture lead, the executives of the company, and say, what have you done in the past? What have you seen work? What can we work towards? What can we work with? Because I don't think there's like a hard and fast rule. It is a good question though. All right, so I think that the question number 3 for me would be the most important if I was going to interview somewhere is, does the company have a doer seller model or do they have an independent growth team? So I'm just going to go on record saying that either one can work and they both have their pros and cons. Where you run into trouble is companies that want to do both at the same time, or they don't have an understanding of what this means. And that's why the answer to this question is so important. Because if you ask the question and they're like, doer seller model, we don't know what that means, or independent, like, I don't know, I don't understand the question. If they don't understand the question, that's problem number 1. Problem number 2 is if they say they try to do both at the same time. So let me tell you what good looks like. Good looks like, all right, the good answer to this question is we have an independent growth team with a growth leader, and we have the delivery teams tied into the growth team, where communication is happening symbiotically, right? So that means that your growth people are accompanying your operations people in their meetings and helping, they're kind of like growing business together, right? Doer seller model means that your PMs are tasked with growth responsibilities. So I think I've started to see this more and more when big company folks like Booz Allen and Grant Thornton and Guidehouse, when those executives go to small businesses and they try to bring that big business mentality into a small business workplace. And they're like, well, what we could do, since the operations people are closest to the customer, is have them be responsible for growth. I mean, that's a good idea. Yeah, why not? I mean, why not have them have their complete day job and a growth role? Good idea. No, it's not a good idea. In fact, I think that's a terrible idea, but that's just my hot take. So I've seen it work successfully for both ways, but I feel like you have to understand that when you are you are in a delivery role, your job is to deliver. Your job is to over deliver, right? You are the face and the reputation of the company to the customer. So tasking that person with growth is a questionable strategy at best. Okay. This is also a hot take. Next question. Who votes in the step gate reviews and how is the work distributed? Do you have a specific BD folks and dedicated capture support as well? So if there happens to be operations people in your gate reviews, your step reviews, I would consider that a red flag, because delivery should always have a seat at the table, and delivery should be table stakes. The ability to deliver should be your deciding factor in your gate reviews and your capture reviews. But I don't think operations should have a vote in the go, no-go votes. That's Alexa's hot take, because operations, if you pull in an operations person, like let's just say you pull in a VP of ops into your gates and they're looking at every single deal, they're going to be looking at it from a, how do I staff this? How do I deliver this? How's it going to impact this, person over here? How's it going to impact this person over here? And you're going to get very tactical very quickly, and it's going to hamper your growth, because in this business, if you're not bidding many deals, because you will lose many deals, you're not going to be growing as fast as some of your competitors. That's just facts. All right. I'm going to move on to my final thoughts on this. And that is, not having a strategy is okay, I think. I mean, there's a lot of companies out there, especially as companies go from a small 8A to mid-market to full, to competing with the bigger companies. It's okay to change your strategy throughout there. Like maybe you started with the doer seller model because the company's 2 people. Okay, that makes sense. And then you moved into an outside growth team, and then maybe you changed into like back to the doer seller in the big business. Like it's okay to change your strategy. It's okay to not have a strategy, but it's not okay to not have a strategy and not try to get one. Get a strategy. Second one, ask about tools. I know that I'm not the only person that every single day I'm noticing there's like, oh, there's a new data tool. There's Govly and Gov this and Gov that and Gov who knows what, right? GovWin is the gold standard, and it has been for the last 44 years. They started in 1979. So, G2X is out there. I have to put a plug for the company. Hey. And there are a bunch of them out there, but make sure when you interview for a role, you're asking what tools do they use, because some are better than others. There are a few out there that are not as good as others. Okay. Always advocate for your recruiters and your proposal ops teams to be included in the bonus pool. Yes, please put this is right. And Marianne's right. I'm not paying attention at the Q&A box. I'm so sorry. If you have questions, put them in the chat. That's my bad. So always advocate for your recruiters and your proposal ops people to be included in the bonus pool. And I'll tell you why. Because, the BD and the capture folks, yes, they are like the heartbeat of the deal, but you honestly wouldn't get anywhere without the other folks, right? Having good proposal people is everything, and a good recruiter is everything, right? And if you work for a company that is so small that you are doing all of these roles, been there, done that. Just wanted to tell you, there are other companies out there that don't make you do every single role. And yeah, so welcome to the party. Let's find a different company. Also, the next one I wanted to say is make sure the company has the capability to sell and they know what it is. There are a lot of companies out here that are extremely confused about their capabilities. Or maybe they're like, well, today we're this, but tomorrow we're going to be this. So I'm going to go try to sell tomorrow's deal today. That is not a strategy that works. Because when you bid on these deals, you have to bid past performance, key personnel. A lot of times, key personnel requires a lot of certifications and experience and all of these things. And if you have recruiters that don't know how to find people for tomorrow's deal today? Like, what's happening here? And trust me, the government knows. The government can spot these things from a mile away. Totally agree with you on ensuring proposals receive bonuses. These roles are vital to the, oh, yes. Thank you, Susan. Appreciate it. Yep, absolutely. And when everybody's working together and everybody gets bonused, everybody has a very skin in the game. They have skin in the game is what it is, actually, right? So let's move on to the next question. Oh yeah, if a small business ensure the company has vehicle reach and a clear understanding of teaming. These are just some other frustrations that I've run into in my career. If there are vehicles out there that make the job of priming a lot easier. So, I mean, it's Alexa's hot take, don't quote me on this, but I think CIOSP 3 and 4, I think the whole entire NITAC actually probably will go out of business. And I think all those task orders are gonna get moved over to GSA vehicles. So that'll be good for Polaris, right? And maybe even Soup, the recompete of Soup. So that'll be an exciting thing to see happen. It has happened once before. So we'll have to see what happens with that. But if you go to interview at a company and they don't have vehicle reach, or they don't have a clear understanding of teaming. And listen, I am the gal that will be like, if you can prime it yourself, do it. I do have that stance, but there should be a multi-pronged approach to growth. And one of those should be teaming, 100%. Making friends with the bigger companies, making friends and getting on these big deals. That's how you get your top secret clearance. That's how you get your SCIF. That's how you get your OCONUS folks. That's how you get those hard to get things that will give you those points on the scorecard bids that are not super easy to get. Okay. All right. So let me go ahead and, yeah, Marianne had a good point. She said that the people that listen to the podcast aren't going to have the questions and answers in front of them. So I have to repeat the questions. But let me pop over to the Q&A box and see what question this one. How often are you seeing solutions architects as full-time positions in a BD team? Wow, Keith, that is a very good question. And I think it happens a lot. So in my experience, I think the best place for solutions architects is to have them living on the proposal ops team. They should be in the proposal ops team and be pulled into and assigned at blue team, right? They should be blue team number one, not the darker blue, but blue team number one. If I should go back and it's like step one, right? Who's going to be the capture manager? Who's going to be the solutions architect? And who's going to be the recruiter tied to this? And the proposal manager, right? So if you see that a company has a habit of making the solutions architects the PM or some other thing, it just tells me that they're a little confused about what a solutions architect's job is. A solutions architect's job is to architect solutions for the proposals. Now, if that person has experience in delivery and maybe they go back and forth, then I could see where they might bid them as an FTE on a proposal. But I do think that it's best to have somebody really dynamic and somebody that lives in a growth team. Yep, that's my answer to that, Keith. Good question. Any other questions about that? All right. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to say thank you. Yeah, my email address is here. And I'm going to I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to start answering questions, more and more questions. So stop sharing. And I've got the Q&A pulled down. Okay. So the next question is, reasonable amount of opportunities a capture manager can primarily be responsible for and still be successful. I think this is a fantastic question. And I want to think about it like a Kanban, like a work in progress, a WIP. They call it a WIP in the Kanban world. So hypothetically, and I'm not talking about BD, right? This is why BD and capture are two different functions. I'm talking about capture. It depends on the size of the deal, but sometimes one could argue that the smaller deals take just as much time, if not more, than the large deals. I don't know how true that is ultimately, but I think that in my experience, that if you're a capture manager and you have to be responsible for shepherding the deal all the way through, I would say probably no more than 5 at the very most. At the very most, to be doing a good job running the blue teams, running this, running that. Can you imagine running all of those things for more than 5 deals? Like your brain would explode, right? Okay. How much value would you put on holding solutioning sessions? Do you think they can be one of the more influential parts of the pay win? Yeah, absolutely, Samantha. If this is my gal Sam, yes, ma'am. And I'll tell you why. So I should go back. Let me just go back in here and talk a little bit more about this because I might have went through that slide too fast. But okay, I'm gonna share this slide and and then I'll answer your question when I'm sharing my slide. Okay, so once again, right? This blue team right here, if the company, step 1, so step 1 means BD got up in front of the executives and said, hey guys and gals, hopefully gals, we want to go ahead and we want to bid on this deal. Here are all the contract things. Here's the path to the win. Here's the capability. Here's the teaming environment and competitive environment. And the executives say 2 thumbs up, make it happen. At that point, and we're talking, right, if you look at this timeline over here, we're talking right after the sources sought was submitted, and when there's a draft RFP or an RFQ or any kind of indication from the government that this is going to happen, that's when that step 1 needs to happen, and the blue team. And the blue team really means blue team creation here. It doesn't mean blue team needs to happen. It means blue team, you're putting together that blue team tiger team. And that means your capture manager, your solutions architect, your recruiters that's going to be assigned to it, and all of the pieces that make up that blue team. And your solutions architects should start right there, right there. Because if you don't start to solution until later on, and like, my favorite is when they don't get involved until like the red team. Like, oh, let's pull the solutions guy in the red team. What? No, if you don't have them pulled in the blue team and have them develop the actual solution, then what are you even doing? So one of my more successful captures that I did, and I think it's still in SourceLex, so I don't even know if I won. I was bidding a key incumbent personnel that was a program manager on a different program. It kind of aligned nicely because her other program was ending. So I pulled her out and I assigned her to the blue team to run it's called mission suitability. I call it mission suitability, but I think it's called, what else is it called? It's called, like your corporate capabilities and your like how you're going to approach the staffing and all those things, right? So I had her run that entire thing because if we won, she would be the person responsible. So that's kind of the answer to that. Yes. And if you don't have anybody that can support your solutioning or anything else from how are we going to deliver this and start building the proposal early, that's another red flag, in my opinion. All right, looks like there's some more chats over here. I'm getting questions in both, so I have to jump back and forth. What is your podcast, and will the copy of the slides be available? Yeah, my podcast is called GovCom Unfiltered, and this is actually going to be an episode, so I appreciate everybody hanging in with me on a Friday night. And will the slides be available? We're going to actually send out slides to every single person that registered. So yeah, I really hope that those are going to be helpful for everybody. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing again, and I'm going to come back here and see if anybody has any final questions for me. Final questions? No? Okay. No final questions. Then I think I will wrap up by saying that this is, hold on, was there a question? There's a Q&A. Okay. You make this growth process sound so easy. Oh, that's actually funny too, because I did a different presentation on this topic, and I was addressing the question like, is AI going to take over our jobs? And I'm like, okay, if you work in BD capture, recruiting, proposal ops, or solution architecting, I think solution architecting might be the only one of those. Or proposal ops, like being a proposal manager. Those two roles I feel like might be the first two that get impacted by AI, and like, how's it going to change? Because I'm sure everybody here has seen, all the different AI tools that are out there, and G2X has a really cool one named Lumen, by the way. But when it comes to the BD capture side of the house, recruiting side of the house, AI might help, might augment, might make things easier and faster, but this is a relationship-based business. And the BD and the capture side of the house are so heavy in the relationship side that I don't see it happening anytime soon. Finding good, open, and supportive teaming partners is really important. We did a white labeled version of our partner playbook. Keith, really, that is awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. One of the things I love about Civic Actions, where Keith works, is that, the company itself is a little bit different of a feel and a vibe than a regular government contractor. They're part of the Digital Services Coalition. And in fact, I think Civic Actions helped start the Digital Services Coalition. So they have that software with the soul type of vibe. And he's absolutely right that, you don't want to have only 5 teaming partners that you go to for everything, because there's going to be a plan B and a plan C and a plan D that you didn't think about that you need, and you don't want to be last minute looking in LinkedIn, like, who do I know that's a woman-owned small business that has access to vets too? So you want to build a strong partner network. Any other questions? Okay, so last 5 minutes, I think I was going to talk about salaries, because I didn't promise it, but now that I'm here, I'm like, why not? Why not talk about salaries? Yay. So I was just going to say, in this industry, if you are a junior BD person, a junior capture person, the salary that you can expect to come in at, if you're a junior, but you have some experience, and usually a lot of folks either come in from the military, come in from delivery, or they come in through being a BD analyst. So if you come in through those ways, I think you could probably pull maybe 160 in this area. 150, 160. Okay, and that means that does not include the bonuses tied to the growth of the company year over year, and that is also not inclusive of the win bonus either. So remember, 160 is like base, and those other 2 bonuses are on top of that. And so if you are a mid to a senior BD person, then you could probably expect to make low 200s. And if you are somebody who's really well known and really good at being a BD capture person, and especially and specifically, if you have a niche area that knows you really well. For example, I don't know if you guys have noticed, but everybody is hiring for T4 and G2. So if you are a subject matter expert in the VA and you are well known and you can run BD and capture, you can almost name your price, probably closer to 300K starting. So that's kind of where the salaries are laying right now, especially in the DC area. So if you are outside of the DC area, I can't speak to exactly how that aligns to your area, but that's kind of where we are here. So, okay, well, if nobody has any other questions, I just want to say have a wonderful weekend. Thank you for joining, and we hope to see you again on a future episode of GovCom Unfiltered.
As we draw the curtain on today's chapter of GovCom Unfiltered, I want to thank you for joining us on this remarkable journey through the intricate world of federal contracting. I'm Alexa Tsui, and it's been an honor to navigate these stories of courage, innovation, and resilience with you. Until we meet again, keep pushing boundaries, exploring new horizons, and making your mark in the government contracting universe. Farewell for now, but not forever. Stay tuned for more adventures that await in the next episode of GovCom Unfiltered. Safe travels on your path to greatness, and remember, we are all on this journey together.